said goodbye to a hero.
Music was just there, always there, from as early as I can remember. My grandfather was a professional musician. He played in 2 orchestras here in town. And my grandmother actually did a radio show from a funeral home. As she would sing, and she would write music for that. Played organ in her church up until the Sunday before she died. Then my mother has played the organ at St. Peter Lutheran Church for coming up on 60 years. I always wanted to be a musician, but it never really found real direction until until probably high school. Then playing in band and being a band geek. Right before my senior year, I was into my junior year, I started playing in club bands, a band of old timers from here in St. Joe called Liquid Fire. I was always the kid, just playing in the horn section for that, and then that band disbanded and it became kind of morphed into another band, and then I played saxophone and trumpet actually in these bands, and then started playing keys in those, and then started singing in those, and did that through college. It was a good way to make a living. You would set up Friday afternoon and then play the weekend, and it was almost every week. It was rare to have a weekend off, and which was awesome. I've just been really blessed, really lucky to be around some really, really good musicians when I was young. And I wasn't good enough to play with them, but somehow I was. That was just really good for me.
Sacrifice them to His blood. Oh, the wonder.
I first met him when I was playing for a group here in town called the New Generation Singers, and I was the accompanist for them. And he came to play a special trumpet part when we were doing Sleigh Ride for the group, for the big Christmas concert. And I was just a freshman at the time, so I was only 14, and I guess he was a senior. And so we just had to do this song together and play for this concert. And so that was my first brush with him. I didn't know him, he didn't know me. I don't even think I even remembered his name or anything. And of course I was just a kid to him. So that was our first brush.
The music director at St. Francis at the time started hiring me to do some special services there. And I heard this girl singing. And I thought, who in the world is this? Because I'm in college at this time, and I'm like, that's not anybody from college. And so I'm in my mind, I'm creating these things. That must be like the daughter of someone who goes here, who's like some famous New York opera singer, and she just comes back at Christmas. And I was like, who is this? And then I find out, she's this high school student, and I just can't believe it.
And so then I kept running into him because I sang a lot of weddings, and I would do sometimes as many as 3 weddings a weekend. And then Eric would sometimes be playing the trumpet at some of those weddings for like the big processionals and the recessionals. And we ended up just seeing each other, but we didn't really know each other. After a while, we weren't just friends, I guess. There wasn't a really marked time. He was very shy, I was very shy. And then we ended up just going to a movie and, grabbing a bite to eat, and our friendship just blossomed into what it is, eventually we just got married. Then it was about 3.5 years later, though.
At that midnight mass, the other guy who was playing trumpet, this sounds totally hokey, but it's true. It really is true. I was just so impressed by this girl. And as she's walking out on the arm of another guy, by the way, I said to this other guy playing trumpet, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. Here we are. both curious, maybe a little bit adventurous in our faith, and really wanted to, I guess, simply just explore.
We ended up trying Word of Life Church for the very first time. And coming out of the backgrounds we came out of, it was a little it was a little overwhelming to us. It was so different that we were like, maybe we need something a little less I don't know how to describe it, a little less intense. Coming out of a very reserved background in the Catholic Church, and Eric coming out of a very reserved background in the Lutheran Church.
Back in those days, it was on a building down on Frederick, and it was not a pretty place. It was, very institutional. You had to go up a flight of steps to get up to where the church was. Ugly green tile, this office space that they had turned into a church, and so it wasn't some grandiose cathedral. But when I went through those doors and went into this place, I had a sense.
Eric had met with a young man who was his friend, and I think they had lunch together and with Pastor Brian. And Eric said, I know where we need to go. And I was like, where? And he goes, Word of Life. And I was like, Word of Life? I said, we went there. I said, the really intense church. And he was like, yep. And he said, I just feel like that's where the Lord is drawing us. And I said, okay.
Through the relationship that we had with a mutual friend, Cammie and I were kind of drawn to Word of Life. So we just started coming to church here. That's it. I wasn't hired. I didn't come here for any other reason than I wanted to come to church here with my family. And then Pastor Brian asked me, to be part of the music ministry here in whatever capacity I wanted.
And then I just kind of knew that maybe he was available, and I met him and interviewed him. I showed him some videos of some of the ideas of what kind of music I might like to have here at Word of Life. And I just showed it to him, like 15, 20 minutes of little video clips I'd put together. And I looked at him and I said, can you do that? And he looked at me and he said, I can do that. And I didn't hire him as the worship leader. He wasn't the worship leader, he was the music director. We had a worship leader, to use rock and roll terms, we had a front man. But Eric's job was to arrange, do some writing, rehearse, lead the band, to be the band leader. But people got nervous by how good he was. And finally, the guy that was the worship leader just bailed on us. And so Eric, at the last moment, one Sunday had to lead worship, and that was that.
One thing that Word of Life has always done well are services, particularly a Sunday morning service. We put a lot of effort and thought into that. So that's always been my main job, is to make sure that we are ready to help lead the congregation in worshiping through these songs that we sing, writing music for this house has always been very important to me, and so I put a lot of effort into that. I'm always paying close attention to what Pastor Brian is saying, not just on Sunday mornings for services, but throughout the week. I'm always paying close attention. Sometimes it'll work out where I'll know what he's preaching, and it'd be like Wednesday, and it's like, man, I think I should try to write a song to that.
November 9th, 1994, I remember it extremely well. I was in my study, and I got a call from a girl that I'd known. She wasn't a member of our church, but I'd known her essentially all my life. She'd grown up just a few houses from where I live in Savannah. And she told me that Eric had been in a very terrible car accident.
As I'm just driving along right past an intersection, I'm in my little red Toyota pickup that I had, and a car was coming. They estimate its speed. They estimated its speed at 90 miles an hour. The next thing I remembered was a brief moment when I became conscious in the cab of the truck, when EMT was talking to, he began talking to me when he saw my eyes open. When they got to the truck, they thought I was dead. And just for a brief moment, I became a bit aware. And I do remember him saying to me, "We're going to get you out of the truck." And then I was out. And then the next thing I remember was being put into the back of the ambulance. Just a brief flickering memory of that.
I went on to the hospital in my friend's car, and I kept saying, "I'm going to be sick. You have to stop the car." "No, I can't stop the car. I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick." And I'm just telling you, the physical struggle was just horrendous. And I think part of that was the two become one flesh. It really happens. And I really think that I was feeling a lot of what Eric was going through.
And so I jumped in my car and drove there. Probably got there in 5 minutes. It wasn't that far from the church. And they were just putting him into the ambulance. And I knew the EMT that was putting him in the ambulance. And I asked him how he is, and he shook his head like, "I don't know." So I knew it was critical, it was grave.
They know that my left side is crushed. That's apparent. The rib cage on my left side is completely crushed. My left, not the actual ball of the hip, but my left hip there, the joint and all that was shattered into pieces as well.
So they ended up saying that they were going to have to put him into an MRI. And so they did an MRI, and they came back and they said, "What we're seeing is not really possible, because there's no way that he could still be alive with what we're seeing, so we need to do an angiogram." And they said, "We think that his aorta is severed." And so sure enough, signed the papers. They went in, tried to do the dye in the angiogram to go up through the heart, and it wouldn't go. They said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do." I'm like, "Well, what do you need from me?" And they were like, "There's nothing that we can do." And this tall doctor kind of leaned over in my face. He said, "You're not getting this, are you?" And I said, "I am trying." And he said, "We're not flying anybody in. It's not worth it. We're not flying him out. It's not worth it. He's going to be dead any moment."
But we were there just praying. And at one point, the surgeon came. It was a woman. Can't remember her name. And she told us how he had suffered a detached aorta, which is, generally you don't survive that. And that it was going to be a very risky operation. See, apparently they assumed he was going to die, and they were sort of waiting for him to die, and he doesn't die. There were no heart surgeons available because they were already in surgery. And then they got done with that one, and this guy is still alive. And so she came and she met with us and told us, how risky this was. And I remember I asked her, I said, "Well, can we pray over you? Can we pray over you?" And she said, "Yes, please."
I do remember I would wake up periodically. They say the pain that's involved in this is worse than the most massive heart attack you could ever have. So the pain was, they would try to keep me calmed down, but it was really bad.
They told me that if he made it through the surgery, which was highly unlikely, that he would be paralyzed. So they went in to surgery, and it seemed like a millennium. It seemed like forever. And of course I never did get to see Eric until right before he went into surgery. I accidentally saw them wheeling somebody down one of the hallways, and I recognized that it was Eric, so I grabbed his mother and we just ran as fast as we could so that we could see if we could see him. And I just prayed that I wouldn't cry or be weak when I talked to him. So somehow I looked at him and he said, "It's really bad." And I said, "I know." But I said, "You have to make it, because I'm waiting for you, and I'll be right here when you come out." And I said it without crying. Somehow. He said, "It's really bad." And I said, "I'm waiting for you, and I don't care how you come out. I'm waiting for you, and I'll be here for you."
I'm not a spooky spiritual guy. I am spiritual. I do want to clarify that, but I really felt that that God was saying, as long as you don't quit, you'll be all right. You won't die. As long as you don't quit, you won't die. So I just believed it.
It happened about 9:50 in the morning. And, we were there all day, all afternoon, into the evening, the operation. And then he's in, there was a fear of paralysis because of nerves involved in all this. But by the end of the night, we knew that he was going to live and that he wasn't paralyzed. And then it was, it was a road to recovery, and they didn't know if he could sing again, because often people that go through this surgery, because the nerve that controls the vocal cord is all involved with the aorta, and the doctor actually didn't think he would be able to sing, but she didn't have the heart to tell him that.
We are the temple, souls that breathe.
And that probably affects me just as much every single day that I hear him talk. And when he ministers and sings, I'm always reminded and very humbled at God's grace again. And I remember Pastor Brian preached years ago, and he said this quote that I just grabbed onto at the moment. That particular quote: "When you begin to regard something as precious, as ordinary, you replace it with something else." And so I guess that would sum up my life with Eric.
That kind of pain, either you react to it in a way that makes you harsh, mean, irritable, or you let pain soften you, and you become compassionate towards other people. You become alerted to the pain that other people have. There's a line that I use all the time. Eric knows it. He uses it too. It's a Dylan line. Behind every beautiful thing, there's been some kind of pain. So none of us get through life unscarred. Nobody makes it without pain. But the pain is not distributed equally. Some get more than their fair share. But it can become the source of artistic inspiration. I think that's what Eric's done. I think he's tapped into his pain to make him more compassionate, and also as a kind of in a strange way, a muse for his creative endeavors.
It took a bit. It took a while for me to be able to sing and have flexibility and the ability to do what I had done. And I don't think I lost anything in the long run. I think my voice is pretty much the same. I guess it would be a nuisance to everyday life, but it's well worth it. You know, because I get to hold my granddaughter. You know, I've gotten to watch both my daughters, Hillary and Emily, grow up. What do I have to complain about? You know, little pain's nothing. So it has affected my life, but there are people that deal with far greater issues than I've ever had to. So I'm thankful.
Bless the name of the Lord.